Yeah, I really got to get busy and change that so we don't have to play the video editor logo every time I put on the thing. I keep forgetting to do that. Hey everybody, welcome to So Local Live. I am Greg Smithwick. You may have heard of me before because I do this thing with live broadcasts that are often political and funny and charming. And our co-host Sam Ronan, who is the Invisible Man today, he's on his phone. I think he's been running around like a crazy man. It's day before primary, so lots of us were out delivering signs and sign waving for candidates and knocking doors, and all of the hot, heavy, difficult work of being a political organizer to make good things happen in our communities. And as promised, we have well, it's not a mystery. We were going to like black out her face and put the voice modulator on her.
I was promised
all my fun, Sam.
I was promised drama and intrigue.
This is JJ, right? If that is your real name.
Fine. Here you are. Hi. Hello. Welcome.
So that's JJ, Jessica. Welcome to So Local Live, where we are super professional and do days of advanced planning for every single episode.
I haven't had anxiety about this at all.
Well, that's good. It would have been a waste of time. I wish you'd have told me. I would have been like, yeah, that's a waste of time because there's no way you can out-stupid me in a show like this. So
I mean, to be honest, like I do different lessons and stuff with tons of kids, so we're good.
Right. So as long as nobody like gets up and spits water at somebody in the background, you should be good to go. Although I do have a Ukrainian tank crew. Is my background from the early part of the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces. Guess whose side we're on?
But like which invasion though?
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
I find it really interesting that Russian tourists are fleeing in terror from Crimea this week because their resort beach in Ukraine is being bombed by the Ukrainians. Whoops! I guess maybe you guys shouldn't have. Opened up a Taco Bell that soon. But I mean, it's 10 years, right? So I remember when that happened, that it was kind of a meh thing. Our shit was all on fire, so people didn't seem to be too concerned about Ukraine. I think that there's no good news in a war that kills thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000 people, maybe puts 4 to 6 million people to flight, but it has certainly got us paying attention to the importance of the Eastern European bulwark of NATO, right? Why is NATO an important alliance? Why was Trump screaming and yelling about dissolving for 4 years? Completely transparent and self-serving to anybody that pays attention to his, I was going to make a nasty remark there. His insistence on supporting Russia in all things, right? That there was a reason for that.
Right.
And it's because he got paid, he got consideration, he got business deals from the Russians to look the other way and weaken NATO. I'm not, I'm a pacifist by nature, but I'm also a military history reader, and understanding that NATO is all that's kept the Soviet Union and now Russia from running over Europe like a speed bump since the 50s.
Right.
So it's kind of important. So there, Sam, what were you doing? You okay? Everything good? Really?
Today, man, I'm gonna eat.
You can't refrain from eating or drinking during our show.
I mean, I think though too. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't realize just the history of Ukraine and just even the Eastern Bloc with Russia. I mean, I think the way that we depict the Cold War from like a standards point of view and how we're educating about it is really problematic. We oftentimes hear, well, it was a Cold War because there wasn't direct fighting going on, which is just wholly incorrect. I mean, if you look at the proxy wars alone and everything that happened in Afghanistan, Korea, Vietnam,
Africa,
South America. I mean, literally everywhere. There are so many casualties that are related to the Cold War. And so to kind of give Russia a pass on that, I think is essentially where that problematic phrasing comes from to start with, in terms of, we're just going to let them do what they want. And, you know, the last time that as leaders we allowed for and afforded, you know, a leader like that appeasement, where did it get us?
How did that go? Yeah.
And
well,
you know,
even looking further back, like I watched a movie a few weeks ago about an English journalist that covered the famine in Ukraine right after Stalin came to power. And so part of the problem for being an older person who's read about those things is I always read that as, you know, there was no question in my mind that Stalin created famine in the Soviet Union, but it was very specifically targeting Ukraine and Ukrainian ethnic peoples. So, you know, this whole idea that they've tried to erase Ukraine before and failed. And you can also see how in the Russian mind, because Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, they feel like they bled and died for that territory in World War II, which they did in great bloody lots. But at the same time, the idea that they've twisted that into some, you know, some Nazification eradication program is ridiculous and laughable. Yeah, because the Ukrainian people have paid far more of a price for that than the Russians did.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Very much very that. And I recently read an article with Gorbachev, actually, where I think it was written just a couple months ago. I'd have to send it to you, but he basically just talks about how he wishes he would have abandoned the Communist Party much sooner, for the sheer fact that they were no longer interested in upholding those ideas of equity and equality, and more so they were interested in upholding, you know, the ideas of Yeltsin, basically.
Right. In fact, Masha Gessen talks about that quite a bit in her book, The Future is History. Mm-hmm. She you know, chronicles the whole period of transition and Gorbachev having said before that should have happened sooner, you know, and Yeltsin actually handpicking Putin. I just can't believe we are where we are. But anyway, so that's our international update. I'm so glad that you're read in, at least to the level I am on this stuff. You know, that's formidable. So thank you for.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be talking now, but I can.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is a show where we again, hours of prep. You know, mercilessly reading flashcards.
I'm off script right now.
Yeah, that's
hours of prep. So much prep work. Oh my gosh. So I don't literally get home from work and immediately like run in a panic and try to shower and immediately get on the show.
Sure.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. We should maybe we could move the time of the show since we are the actual producers.
Never.
Okay.
We are not surrendering.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you. Sam's angry. We gotta let him work through his anger issues. So my awareness of JJ actually starts last Monday night at the Newport Richey City Council meeting. I mean, I think I had seen posts for you before. I don't think we'd ever met. Have we met in person? And I just don't remember it because I was stunned by this person in the front of the room that kept standing up and saying devastatingly factual things like, I'm the person that filed for an FBI investigation, which at a city council meeting is something that perks you right up and gets your attention. So I wanted to have you on because I wanted you to talk about, you know, you said that you went to Pasco Elementary, Gulf Middle, Gulf High School. Is that right?
So I went to Cody River Elementary,
right.
Pasco Middle, and then I graduated from Gulf High.
Okay, so at least as local as I am, my route is Schrader Elementary, Bayonet Point Middle, Clearwater Catholic, then Hudson. But, you know, like I also grew up here. And, you know, we've seen lots of changes. And one of the things that I was excited about in the last 5 to 7 years as I've been covering local events for media, for myself, for media, for podcasts, for internet broadcast, is it really looked like Newport Richey was going to, you know, kick the calcified rust off of its carcass and do some really cool things downtown. And I have to say that some of the things that have happened downtown have been really cool. Mm-hmm. We moved a little bit away from bar culture and more into, you know, street festivals and pride and things like that. But at the same time, throughout that process, it's been pretty clear to me that behind all that has been a lot of the same, you know, I don't know how do I want to characterize it? The same.
Have you ever heard about Mark Twain talk about the golden age and how it's almost like a golden plated apple, and like you bite into it and it's rotten on the inside?
Yes.
And I think and I've been thinking about that a lot, because for me, you know, I'm not a city resident anymore.
Right.
But I was for a long time, and many of the families that I've served over the years have been. And so I keep thinking about it from that sense, because in a lot of ways, I see these changes that are happening on the outside that look great, but the issues that we've struggled with since I was a kid, you know, I mean, I grew up on welfare. I grew up on food stamps, and my mom had me super young. Like I don't come from any kind of money. And so I'm very familiar with a lot of those problems that our people face.
Right.
And so to see like kind of things be advertised as if they're perfect, but not just the advertisement, but the fact that you have an active community who has tried to reach out to council members, who has tried to work with the people that are in positions of power, and for them to be treated like they're loons and criminals. I mean, they literally were called loons, and yet they're executing laws that don't have names on them.
Right. So how has your activism regarding the city of Newport Richey changed in, let's say, the last 2 years?
Oh, so I've always kind of been a little bit more like behind the scenes.
Right. I gather that because I don't remember ever seeing you.
and you know, I've kind of liked it that way, but I'm realizing, especially as I get older, and I have become more privileged, you know, not just because of the way I look, but from a financial standpoint too,
right,
that there is a lot to be said for me being more forward facing. And
right.
I think that has been a big part of me being more vocal and attending meetings and things like that. But you know, in 2008, I started advocating at the superintendent level, trying to, you know, get a superintendent elected at that time. I was president of Model Congress at Gulf High. I actually went on to work for John Legg in 2012. And I had actually turned down an internship with Obama to do that, which honestly, like I don't.
Was that a good choice, JJ?
Honestly, I feel like it was, because, and this is what I told John at the time too. I remember it so distinctly because I got the phone calls like 24 hours apart from each other. Yeah. And I hadn't applied for the internship with John. He had just heard I was in town and was like, hey, let's call her. Let's see if she'll help. And I was like, you know what, if I am involved in that, I'm going to know and understand so much more about local politics,
right,
rather than just kind of being a wheel in the system. And at the time, I agreed, honestly, with a lot of his viewpoints on things. He was much more like removed libertarian, not so much like staunch partisan politics that we see now at this point, you know.
People are going to, 10 years from now, nobody's going to believe that was ever really a thing, but it was.
It really was. And having grown up, you know, with a lot of those families, it was kind of just like a no-brainer. And I don't regret it, because I do feel like I learned a lot about our local area. But more specifically, how I got involved with Newport Richey was just a lot of my former families calling or reaching out and asking for help. Like, how do we work with our local government? Basically was like the main question. Like, how do we handle this lien on our house? And, you know, my background is, so I have a bachelor's in pre-law and education with, you know, a focus on international relations. And then my master's is ed leadership. And I've taught a lot of, you know, government and law studies and stuff. Yeah. So a lot of my kids have known, like, hey, from my position, I want to empower you to advocate for yourself. And I want you to empower you to advocate for your family. And so they were getting a lot of answers that I would argue are unethical and not legal. And that was how I became really involved. And, you know, realizing kind of how far up and how extensive certain things were too. Realizing, like, I even went to school with some of the people that have been affected, like Marlo, you know, like I actually went to middle school with him, and I was like, wait a minute, you were that kid riding your bike in my neighborhood all the time.
Right.
You know, So I don't know if that answers your question completely.
Yeah, but you've seen it. You've seen a change in how you need to relate to the council and the things that you have to approach them about. Does that?
Yeah.
Now, do you think that's because those things weren't happening before? Now they are, or because we are sometimes blind to those things because we like those people?
I think there's a couple things at play. Earlier this year, I actually was a couple months into the interview process for an executive director position for a nonprofit in our area. They're tri-county, so they're located in 3 different areas. And when I went and pulled their 990s, which those are the tax forms that a 501c3 has to file, I noticed a lot of red flags. And, multiple 990s, finances not being tracked, no tracking of grants, no tracking of donations, just a mess.
Okay.
And then you notice, or at least I started noticing, how many local officials were affiliated with board members and starting to watch where certain donations go, and then they're not on specific government forms. There's a lot of money that's exchanging hands right now. And it's not just in Newport Richey, but it's also in Pasco County.
Do you feel like saying what the organization was? You don't have to. That's fine with me. I'm just,
no. And the reason for that is because I don't think that the founders were aware. I think they were really being taken advantage of. And I think at this point, things should be changing. Gotcha. And so I want, I definitely live by that motto of give people the opportunity to do better once they know better. If you've given them that opportunity, gloves are off.
Yeah, I remember, 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and if I get the timing wrong and somebody sues me, that's how it goes. We had this problem with the Rope Center, which is a homeless services shelter in Hudson, Florida. I say Florida because there's some people watching that may not be down here. But anyway, where I was at a city council meeting or county commission meeting where it was clear they were not following the HUD guidelines for equality as far as treatment of LGBTQ and trans folk. Like they didn't know what they would do if a trans person showed up. And I said, it's funny to me that you don't think one already has, because 2 of them have told me they were refused services because you didn't know how to deal with them.
And who in our county manages HUD funding, Mr. Smith?
I don't know. Tell me.
David Lambert.
Okay. I'm going to tuck that away because was that true 5 years ago?
You should, and you should look in to see if the mismanagement of funding for HUD has ever been investigated.
Yeah,
let's do it.
On that particular day, we made the point that the county nor the Homeless Commission should be distributing funds to the Rope Center because of their noncompliance with HUD equality guidelines or their even willingness to address it. After which, when the county commission had said, yeah, okay, we're not going to do that, Jack Mariano said, I want us to move to give $50,000 to the Rope Center. We were like, I think the F not, because if any of that money is tied to HUD, you can't do that. And that's what they were trying to do, is they were trying to go around the HUD guidelines to fund. Now, does the Rope Center do some good work for some people? I'm sure they do. And a lot of people got really mad at me for saying, yeah, okay, but the reason we want county government to pay for these services is because that way we can guarantee that people are treated at least within the HUD guidelines, like that as a baseline. You can't, I know there are a lot of providers that are churches and homeless services and other needy services in our community, but if it's a church, they can discriminate against whoever they want. If they don't collect any federal funding, they do it. They can say, we don't like Jewish people in our shelter and keep you out.
Sure can. And that you bring that up, because if you also start looking at all the different boards that that same HUD person I had mentioned, David Lambert, sits on.
Oh, I wrote it down.
And how HUD funds are disseminated into some of our local boards. Sorry, I started reading what was on the screen.
Okay.
And if you also look into the mystery $600,000 that went missing over in District 5 that was supposed to be allocated for a nonprofit organization to help impoverished West Pasco students. Now, as someone who has worked at 3 different feeder patterns throughout West Pasco with our impoverished students and written an entire thesis on equity and access, I can assure you we never saw those $600,000. And that 501c3 subsequently closed the following year that it was opened.
I think I know about that 501c3. I'm pretty sure I know what that organization was and why it folded. So we'll talk off air about that. We'll swap dirt after this is all over. It's interesting. So you've been pretty looped into this story that these stories in Newport Richey that are brewing regarding treatment of minorities before, during, and after the what we would call the George Floyd summer, the BLM protests here in town. How do you feel about, do you think the city is? It's such an obvious question. I'm gonna shake my head while I ask it. But do you think the city said, wow, we actually do have a racial policing problem and an anti-Semitism problem, and we're going to change it? Do you think that they've addressed our concerns, your concerns?
No. I sent a follow-up email today, actually, to all of the city council members, to pretty much every single person that is a city staff member that I could find a public email address for, just basically stating like, hey, like, this is what we asked for on Tuesday. It's been 6 days. We've heard nothing.
Right.
And frankly, I mean, it's the things that I've seen my own, students and families go through was first all, not great. I already knew there was a problem just from my own personal experience. And frankly, from, the things I heard said about my own family growing up. And so none of that was surprising to me in that sense. Now, I think part of the problem comes in just acknowledging that we have systemic issues. Everybody has them. We have institutional issues. Everybody has them. And, if you were married to someone and said, hey, I want to talk about some of the problems that we have so that we can work on it and we can improve, and your spouse was in complete denial about the fact that they existed, probably wouldn't work out so well. And so I think it's just disingenuous to even really give them the opportunity to not acknowledge that these problems exist. And I think the point that really starts to get people riled up is when you start talking about individuals that are specifically upholding the systemic problems, right? Because you typically have 2 people or 3 people, really. You've got, one who is contributing to the problem and they're in complete denial about the fact that they're probably a bully, probably racist, probably bigoted, right? They just think that there's no problem with it. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some of those other people later. Right. But then you've got the other ones who they just kind of want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and pretend that there aren't problems because it's uncomfortable to address them. And, talking about systemic issues can be uncomfortable because we're talking about people's everyday lives. We're talking about how they feel and we're talking about how they're treated and their livelihood. But that doesn't mean that we can just put our head down and avoid them. And frankly, that silence asides with the oppressor, and so do I think that Newport Richey is going to acknowledge? I hope so. I'm going to be really annoying until they do.
That's all we got, right? Is so I come to this kind of world from counseling, and the kind of counseling that I've been doing the last decade or so is batterer intervention program for men who are in trouble for domestic violence against their intimate partners. And other family related counseling things, like sort of the technician that knows why your car is making the noise it's making, even though I don't have an advanced degree. That kind of therapeutic work comes from me being sober myself and helping my family and other families heal from all of that. So what you're describing is the dad who gets sent to me for a course of classes, and I have to point out to him at the end of an assessment, about an hour and a half discussion, there are problems here, right? And there are some things that are not of your creation, but there are things you can definitely do to make the life of your family better. And about a third of the time, that guy gets super, super mad at me it's already been determined he's going to have to spend 26 weeks in a room with me. So getting mad at me on day one doesn't, it doesn't. It's an opportunity for me to let him know, look, if you can't admit that there's a problem, then there's no point. You might as well go to jail. And that's when they get very serious about it, because that's why you're here. You're here because a judge decided that you probably could make some changes and be okay and not hurt your family, or you can go to jail.
But the city is in the same position, and
that's what I'm saying.
That's the argument that I made, is that you can either acknowledge that these things are problems and that you have failed as an institution to not only provide our residents with the services that they are entitled to, but also your own employees.
Right.
And so you can't acknowledge that you've opened yourselves up to massive liability because of your practices, then ultimately there's really no hope for you. You're going down either way. So either you figure it out now and make a change, or...
Well, it seems to me that the person on the city council right now who's most well positioned to do something is Rob Marlowe, who has unfriended me and unfollowed me on social media and wouldn't even make eye contact with me until I stared him down while I was speaking the other night, because he went publicly after people that we knew that were active in city government, showed up for meetings, did things, were on the Arts and Culture Council, and have since moved away with their families because they were so devastated that he would tell us we took the wrong side. About 2 weeks before pictures came out, video came out of his police officers praying with the Proud Boys, some of whom were at the January 6th insurrection in DC.
And now have a court date.
Yeah. But he's a lame duck now.
Yep.
I mean, he can spend the rest of this year pissing off that power structure that is so abusive and corroded, and not have a negative consequence, because he's done. He's going to be not there anymore. He can direct this.
What I
leadership.
think is sad though is that I truly feel that there are a lot of city employees that have probably contributed to some of these problems because they were so normalized. Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said about that, because oftentimes, just from my own perspective and positions of leadership, I know that the culture that I set for my people, and if you have different leaders that are going to allow and expect different things and your livelihood is at stake, it's how you can get so many people to be compliant. However, if you go in and you look at that employee survey, and that's, across the board for code enforcement, for police officers, for everyone, there's a lot who want to connect with the community. Our boots on the ground people and our boots on the ground employees, a lot of them don't want this continued conflict, this opposition between local government versus residents that's kind of taking place. And so it's interesting, because it seems like there's really only a handful of people that want to continue to use both the residents and employees as pawns in this political game for their own personal gain. Right. And I know that part of it is because of all the growth that we've seen in Pasco. We've never seen money like this before. And it's making people, essentially, you can either kind of grow up and have ethics, or you can continue to act like you have an undeveloped brain.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I pay some attention to Marlowe. Sam popped up one of Marlowe's comments. Actually, I don't know that it was Marlowe's. Pasco Young Revolutionaries, which is an organization that he's part of, but they've still never apologized to Marlowe Jones after wrongfully arresting and setting him up just because he was a black leader. That bill is going to come due, and it's going to come due in the form of a lawsuit now, because they couldn't get out in front of this and be honest that there was a problem. And that's been, that's the reason I got animated is a better word, about us having a Pride Festival in Newport Richey in 2018 was because when they had the Pulse Memorial in Sims Park, now I know the two women that organized that. I know them well. And I was so angry about what I heard that day that I tried to interview them after the memorial to, ask them, hey, WTF. But I was so angry I couldn't air it. It was obvious that I was angry about what I had heard. on the tape, and I felt like I was just going to beat these two ladies up, and that's not necessarily my thing. But essentially,
I'm pretty sure. What year was this, Greg? Was
2017? It was a few months after Pulse. Is that 2017? I think that
was 2016.
2016.
Do you know if one of them was possibly a local pastor?
No, it was. I'll say their names, and because we've talked about this. Heather Fiorentino and Judy DeBella Thomas, who used to be on the city council. They were the two women, and she is a pretty religious actor, even in city government. But I talked to the two of them after, because no one from the local LGBTQ community was invited to speak at this event. And then a guy who does really exemplary work with veterans also took the opportunity to tell us this wasn't an attack on gay people. This was their keynote speaker, because he understood PTSD because he'd been in the service. This was an attack on our democratic American values. That was the gist of the Pulse Memorial. Yes. And when I asked Heather and Judy, did you not think to invite members of the gay community to speak? They said, oh, well, we don't know anybody in that community. And I was like, would you like me to introduce you? Because there's 30 or 40 of them standing right over here behind me. I'm not going to out anybody, but they're mad. You can see who they are because they're furious at you right now. Well, and I stood under the trees at Sims Park that day. I guess God is my witness. We will have a pride festival. And I went looking for the right volunteer. And that's why that happened, is just because I was just so incensed that they couldn't even see that they had fucked that up. We promised no profanity, and they just blew it.
Oh, no.
It's interesting you say that, though, too, and I think that's what I mean by certain things are just so normalized that people don't even necessarily realize that it might be problematic. And I feel like I spend a lot of my time with my own family trying so hard to just cut through the rhetoric and propaganda that people hear about what it means to be gay or trans. And I'm not trans, so I can't personally say, but I can say that I've been a staunch advocate for my students and things like that are trans, and that's not going to stop. Right. And I think that a lot of the things that have been discussed, I'm very much in this position of, you're going to have to fight me before I stop doing what I think is right for kids. That's just where it's at.
And I felt and feel the same way about, it's funny that you mentioned earlier, and I'm just loving interviewing you. I'm having a great time with this. I hope you're okay, but you were saying earlier that you grew up in a household where there were financial problems, that you had to have assistance, and yet you identify yourself as a privileged person. And I find that really interesting, because I think people get the wrong idea about what privilege is. Privilege just basically means that I didn't have all the disadvantages of other marginalized communities. But I will tell you that I think poverty is one of the most under-identified, marginalized communities. I think because it's overlaid with systemic racism, and it lands primarily on communities of color. I get that. But there were very poor white kids, only because there were no black families allowed to settle in West Pasco County, other than outside that little Pine Hill nodule. That was it. I went to Hudson with one person of color. He was Dominican and had been adopted by a white family. It's not even like we had an African-American family at my high school in 1982, because they were not allowed. They were redlined out of participating in being a part of Regency Park, Jasmine Lakes, Embassy Hills, Beacon Woods. They were just not allowed. So they all ended up either in the east end of the county, or specifically in that little part of Port Richey, Newport Richey. I only say that to say I find it really fascinating and commendable that you white middle-aged cisgendered guys watching this show, all 20 million of you, understand that if someone who grows up poor in a small town in Central Florida is a woman and can identify her own privilege, so the hell can you. You can find it. And what you owe is not reparations necessarily. What you owe is absolutely owning your privilege and using it to convince other people that look and sound like you that they are coming from a position of privilege. Yeah. That's what you owe.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam, you were delayed there.
Oh no, I said and reparations. I mean, we can still have reparations.
And reparations, sure.
Reparations.
It's a progressive show. We can say reparations without bursting.
We can say, oh yeah, or we're gonna say reparations.
Yeah.
we are literally going to just give the city of Newport Richey to Marlo Jones at this point. That seems appropriate.
I mean, that's only one lawsuit that we know or hear of.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
there are other things happening here. I would much rather the city of Newport Richey spend these, I don't know, millions of dollars that they're going to have to pay. I would rather them spend that money on things that benefit, I don't know, maybe some affordable housing. It was really funny to me that they jumped on that like a live grenade when one or two of us brought up, oh, maybe we could use some of this parks money for affordable housing. Like we were all going to go, gosh, they're going to, like we were just going to believe that they would do that. I don't. I've had that conversation with them in front of the council before, where I actually got interrupted by Newport Richey cheerleader Reagan Weiss standing up to argue with me while I was on Vox. It was like, what are you even doing?
Ask me though, why is it does he have personal messages with Debbie Manns where he's asking to be paid by a third party to help Main Street come what he wants? Why don't you volunteer your time, Reagan? Because that's what I do. All those grants and everything that the city manager has decided to pass up because she doesn't want to attract the wrong clientele, and she doesn't think that, it'll be good for our community, like community gardens and things like that. And we're leaving over $1 million on the table in grants. That's what I want to know. Why are you going after the city misusing funds? And why is Debbie Manns willing to entertain those propositions rather than you actually doing what's good for the city?
We don't even have to. That's it. That's the end. That show's over. That's a bomb. And so let's just say that of the millions of exactly, Casey, my daughter, mic drop. That's it. Show's over. Move along. Of the 14 million people that are watching today that all live in Pasco County that say, I want to go to a place where they meet to talk about things like this and we make a plan for what to do about it. How do they do that?
Well, I think right now, there's a couple things. One, on, September 6th, the city absolutely needs to not reappoint Driscoll. I mean, that's completely obvious. Like his involvement in terms of the everyday ongoings in the city are completely inappropriate. The fact that at the city council meeting, he tried to basically lawyer the council members by skirting the truth and saying that they don't have ongoing cases. And then when I went up there after Rob was banging the gavel and still continued to speak and say, your lawyer is lying to you. They have received notices of claim. You do have ongoing litigation. And that's when they finally turned and said, can we get some clarification? And he has the nerve to say, oh, well, my office doesn't handle those. Those go to the insurance company. Like, is he really going to try and claim
like he didn't get notice? Right.
Like he doesn't know what's going on, or that he doesn't know that you can't serve warrants in the manner that he has approved. Like,
I almost wish Rob Marlowe had continued speaking right then, because I got the feeling he was going to incriminate the crap out of the city if he'd kept rolling right then. Damn it.
And that's some of the own thing, and that's not the first time or the first issue or the first complaint. Right. And we haven't got to this point because people have been looking for years. They've been looking at what's going on for years, and they have tried. They have tried to talk. They've tried to do the right thing. And so we need to essentially stop gaslighting our residents and thinking that they're the problem. That's not the case. They're not the problem.
You had some specific asks in your Vox, did you not? You said a protection under a whistleblower statute or a city ordinance for whistleblowing. Was that you?
That was Judith Allen. Who?
Okay, so I'll wait till we get Judy on the show. We'll talk about that. But Judith, she goes by Judith, not Judy, I think. Anyway.
I think.
Yeah. See, I only get called Gregory when I'm in court or my mom is mad at me. Otherwise, I'm just Greg. So we'll talk to her about that. I just want that was a fascinating thing to me, that there were people that showed up at that meeting that went to Vox with solutions. Because we've all gone up and said our piece and seen nothing happen. Now, what, and I've had this happen at the county level too, where an assistant county administrator said to me, well, you can't just expect the county commission to come up with X. You have to come up with a plan. I'm like, I'm not getting paid to come up with a plan. You're actually being paid to come up with. Why do you, what do you want me to do? Submit you a 50-page?
Yeah, and maybe that's part of it, but I'm like, as a government educator, I'm like, do you need help on how to run a government? Like, do you need like a play-by-play? I'm like, do you need like a rehash of what's ethical? And that's the other thing that gets me in terms of the disconnect between what the city manager is allowing and their overall reports to city council. Like, when's the last time we saw a financial report? Like, that's problematic. That is extremely problematic behavior, and the lack.
I think they read off the running balance the other day or something like that, and that was about it.
And that's really any, and that's not acceptable. And so, to just reiterate, like, investigating the actual city, investigating, Debbie Manns, investigating and expecting that if you're going to make racist and anti-Semitic remarks, then you should lose your job. And if you're going to laugh and encourage them, then there needs to be some sort of action about that too.
I wish I'd have had more than 3 minutes the other day, because one of the other things that I wanted to make sure to mention was, as disturbing as the joke was, and whispering it twice so that it could all have a chuckle, not one of the New Porgy police officers, the code enforcement people, the city attorney, who were all within earshot, said, hey, that's an anti-Semitic joke and you should not fucking do that. Nope. It didn't occur to any of them to say that was not
a fucking word.
Right. So how many times do we think that someone has called Marlo Jones or any of our other friends of color, our friends who are activists, names, and not called them the Looney Brigade or whatever they say?
And I'm sure they're using much worse words than loony.
Right. We elect the city council. I say we because I've lived in New Porgy before. I don't currently, but the people of the city of New Porgy elect the city council to lead, to instruct the city manager on what is expected, or hit the highway, go get another job in Ohio or some crazy place like that.
Or Monroe or something.
Before, right? But so sending someone packing who tolerates that, I mean, everybody in that video ought to be held accountable for that joke, because not a one of them said that's not appropriate. Have you looked at it?
And the other thing I left out too when I addressed city council, I think you don't have to personally identify with the Holocaust to be a human, but my maiden name is Liefendowski. My great-grandfather was in a concentration camp. Like, I have the pendant that he wore around his belt loop. It's like, this isn't, and that's the other thing that really gets me sometimes, is when you talk to people who don't understand that these feelings and hatred and anger still exist, because we're not that far removed from that history. We're not that, like, we're not even 100 years out. And that's nothing when you're looking at the lifespan of a civilization. It's nothing.
Right.
And, it's so hard because people think, well, this happened so long ago, or that happened so long ago, or maybe they don't understand about how all these different things are connected, but when you have school board members or candidates who are, self-declaring as German Aryan, and people aren't understanding what that means, that's mind-blowing.
Do you guys mind if I play that video?
Go for it.
Hang on, let me pull up the right screen here. Hold on. This is Stephen Meisman, is that right?
Yep.
And he's a candidate for school board here in Pasco County?
In District 1.
District 1?
And I will say too, the scary part is that, there's 3 seats that are up right now. And him for District 1, Tussell for District 5, and Geiger for District 3. And Geiger and Tussell kind of present themselves in a bit more undercover kind of way. But let me tell you, if you listen to them speak, they endorse the same ideologies.
Oh, and Tussell's statement that he put out on Facebook was very instructive about what he stands for. His platform it's everything, it's 10 reasons not to vote for that human being, because he's going to
Well, I love too that he brags about the fact that he worked at Anclote High School, which is one of the Title I schools, high minority population, and you know, as someone that is a clinical educator mentor and works with new teachers, I wonder why he wasn't there for a full semester even.
Yeah.
And who worked on that campus.
All right, so let's listen to what Stephen Meisman has to say for himself. There is a subtitle caption here. I haven't watched this, so let's just see. Let's see. Casey, all will be revealed. By the way, she says to remind you guys that I'm lying, that my actual name is, my legal name is Greg's Benedict. So.
Ooh.
Hey, here we go. Why is that not audioing? Here we go. Wait a minute. Okay, we're going to try that again. I don't know why I don't have audio, but I hit the right series of buttons, I thought. Share screen, screen 2, share system audio, share. Let's try all that again. This clip came with no audio.
Oh, that's so sad.
I'm so sorry. Crap. Sorry. So, like I said, hours of prep ruined. Hours of prep ruined. There was video this week for Casey's benefit and everybody else of this particular candidate identifying himself as an ARYAN, and then when
not
people,
just this week.
Oh, so okay, so it's happened more than once.
Yes. Yes. So it started.
He seemed to be making an issue out of some people in the audience surmising that meant he was a Nazi.
So, okay, so I was there.
Right.
So he made a whole post about me, by the way. So if anybody reads his post.
Oh, is this the one where you're very large and intimidating?
Yes, I'm large, I'm
scary.
substantial, I'm scary, and I have traumatized him and his children.
What a big, strong ARYAN dude is intimidated? Yeah. Come on, man.
Who's like 6'4".
Oh,
I mean, I am like 6 foot, you know. My favorite part was that I had cavernous lungs. That was my favorite part. I was like,
okay.
It's now my husband's favorite thing to read when he's feeling a little down. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go read that post again.
Nice. All right. So please continue. How did this video happen?
All right. So the first time he said it was an interview with Bianca Goolsby, who runs the Teaching for a Culture.
Yes.
And
very dear friend.
Yeah, she's awesome. And he talks about how he does not believe in equity. He doesn't support it. And I would love to know, like, does that include disabled people? Like, are we just only allow stairs as we walk?
No more ramps.
No more ramps for you.
Right.
How dare you? You're weak. Grow legs. Like, I mean, what are we doing?
Gotta adapt, kid.
So he, and then he goes on to say he's trying. First of all, he's trying to talk about his relationship with the students and the students of color, and he's saying, like, I understand I can be scary because I'm German ARYAN. He's like trying to identify or somehow. So that was like the first kind of clue as to what is going on here. But if you ask anybody, you know, he claims to have taught for 5 weeks in an engineering program. And there have been a lot of reports that everybody knew that he was a white supremacist. And so at this particular town hall, there was myself, my 6-year-old daughter, because I wasn't assuming that anything horrible was going to happen.
Right.
And tons of volunteers and former students. And, you know, typically when we go to these town halls, it's kind of like someone hosting it. There isn't a lot of back and forth. There's no moderation. And so they were saying, I mean, just very alarming things. Like Tucel was saying that we need to have ceiling cannons in the roof of our schools to protect them. You know, I'm not even kidding.
Ceiling cannons?
Ceiling. I'm not joking. I promise you.
I believe you. I believe that the thing was said.
I mean, I played Super Mario World.
Cannons, and they come out of the ceiling.
Yes.
Okay, so like I'm a bad guy. I'm in the school, and then it just like pops out. It's like, rah!
I'm just gonna assume that they're like big cartoon style black, cannons with a little fuse that be like
Yes.
Yes.
And then my favorite part was that he kept proclaiming he had been trained by a fire marshal, and so it would be fine if we only have one entrance and one exit to the schools. I'm like,
has he ever been to a local public school where there's 6 buildings?
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So, you know, there was a lot of that going on. Geiger had mentioned that he really wants to advocate for our ESC students and then refer to them as kids with mental retardation. Like,
there's a scene in Something About Mary that covers this exact, and it was funny then. Now it's just not funny.
I mean, it was disturbing. And so when they say that, you know, we all went and caused a ruckus, it was just that any time that one of them lied, people simply said, that's not true.
Yes, and he went to the Acme Wiley Coyote School of Engineering, Casey. That's what's going on there.
And so, you know, they got very disgruntled. They were all 3 of them, very angry. And at the end, Chuck made some kind of comment about, you know, book banning and that he doesn't want to ban all books because that would be for Nazis. And that, you know, it shortly ended after that. And then I don't know, like, suddenly I think what happened was that they realized that Jim just wiped the floor with them. I mean, he clowned on them hard, like
as we knew he would.
Yes, he was basically like, well, if you've been in a classroom, you would know that kids are writing resumes and they have financial literacy and don't have any sort of agenda and indoctrination. And so he, at the end, suddenly Meisman starts getting super upset and he accuses Jim of calling him a Nazi. And Jim's like, I didn't say that. You said that. And, you know, you see him in the video, he walks away. And if we post the YouTube video, it's like around 2:10. And so suddenly, you know, Meisman starts yelling. He's like, this man is an SOB. This is how he's so sneaky and he's actually a radical. And, you know, Jim, being the classy dude he is, he's just walking out. And I'm standing there. I don't know if I'm like breaking up. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. And I'm standing there and I'm like listening to Meisman scream. And finally, I'm just like, you can't take the Pasco out of the girl. And
oh, snaps for that.
And, you know, I just kind of stepped to him and I did get pretty loud. And I was like, you're the one who self-proclaimed as a German Aryan.
Not just an Aryan. Listen, the Germans did a lot of heavy lifting in the 20s and 30s to try and create some cultural mythology about Germany. And the whole Aryan thing being related to white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germanic people is shady at best, right? The Aryans were not necessarily. So to identify yourself as a German Aryan, you're basically that's a huge dog whistle to other Nazis.
Right.
It really is. That's who he's talking to.
Is. And so you can see him in the video. He's standing there by himself, and he just keeps saying, "I'm German. I'm Aryan. I have blue eyes." And I'm like. And then, you know, in his post, he like calls me racist and he's like, what's going to happen to people who look like me? I'm like, bro, I look like you. Sadly.
You'll be fine.
You know, and
you're like last on our list.
Yeah. And it's just, it's been crazy just to see like how you feel like you're taking crazy pills and not in a good way. You know,
it's funny. It's funny how many middle-aged white guys see equality as oppression.
Yes.
Like, because you want to be equal, they are oppressed because they're not allowed. How dare you keep them from controlling everything? Yeah.
And I mean, at one point, he even says public education. Yuck. I'm like, why?
Yeah, Jim's bat signal must have gone off. Hey, I know her. He was somewhere out there in East Pasco. Wait a minute. Somebody's singing my praises. I'm going to jump on.
Yeah. So for the primaries tomorrow, you know, vote for Jim Washington. He's the only one that has actually an education background, 28 years of experience now. And he's definitely just all about how can we serve people on any level, you know, answer questions, be available.
I have a hard time imagining that people that like and follow our channel, our show, our Facebook presence won't know this, but his opponent, if I understand this correctly, did not live in the district he's running for at the time of qualification.
No,
and that there is an FEC complaint about this, but it might not be handled till we don't know when.
So, well, okay. So I'm the one that filed the FEC complaint. I don't know if you know that or not. And I filed that before I actually came on to work for Jim. Because honestly, when I saw him on the ballot, I had worked with him previously. He had such a good reputation. I was like, oh, it's going to be in the bag. No problem. And then I see that, Hernandez has $71,000, mostly in development money, and doesn't even live in District 1. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening? Like, what happened? And I feel like I got blindsided because like we had COVID and I was kind of under the weather for a while. And I was like, okay. I felt like I was like getting off the couch like an old man. I'm like, I have to go to work.
Right.
But yeah,
I do that every day. Welcome middle age. Because
But yeah, when I saw that not only were there allegations that he didn't live there, but he had gone on record with Jeff Solacek stating that he didn't live there. And you can't do that.
He's admitted publicly that he doesn't or didn't live there at the time of certification.
Twice.
How does Brian Corley allow this guy to stay on the ballot? And I've been defensive of Brian Corley in the past, but this seems like shady shenanigans bullshit to me.
So in all fairness, Brian Curley's, position is ministerial. Technically, he doesn't have the power to be like, oh, you don't qualify. He has to take the oath on its face, right? So here was my challenge and issue with Brian Corley that I brought and included in the FEC complaint, which was your oath is negated by the fact if you then later admit on record that your oath meant nothing.
Right.
I'm going to copy and paste your update on the FEC complaint here in the thread. But if you what I started to say was I can't imagine anybody that listens to this show is going, well, I like that Jim Washington guy, but I don't know, Al Hernandez. If you're that person, you need to read this FEC filing because they clearly put somebody in the race who didn't live in the district, who is pretending to live in the district even now. He's the Mehmet Oz of the Pasco County School Board race. And that's one of the best comparisons, the nicest comparisons I could make about any of the candidates that we're talking about other than Jim.
And you know what's sad too is like he probably could have won in District 3 if he just would have waited until
he just stayed there and waited.
Retired,
Right.
And I don't know why the party didn't think that through. And I think part of it is because here's where I think they really messed up. I think he got advice from commissioners who the election law says you have to reside in that area at the time that you take office. That is not
when you
how it
qualify.
works.
Right.
Correct. For school board members, it is when you qualify. And I think that's where they screwed themselves and gave bad advice. And I'm like, well, this local government teacher has been paying attention for a long time.
I want to make sure that I say that it's only bad advice if he doesn't get elected. So all of you who are sitting on your mail-in ballots, fill them out tonight, get them turned in tomorrow. There's a drop box at the supervisor's office. You can drop them off throughout the day till polls close tomorrow night. If you don't have time to get there, go to your voter precinct with your mail away ballot in hand because they're going to want that back before they let you vote. But tomorrow's the day.
Hang on, that's not a thing.
Yeah, that's not a thing. They can
go and you don't have your mail-in ballot. They're just going to ask you to dispose of it. They're going to.
Oh, okay. I thought you had to bring it. I was advised to bring it with me if I did that. Okay. Sorry.
Just
government teacher and a voting expert. I've waded in over my head. I'm way beyond my high school education level at this point. But what we want you to do is vote today, tomorrow. Get the ballot in. It doesn't do us any good if you wanted the mail-in ballot, you never did anything with it. You got to go vote, and that's the only way we make the kind of change we need to see in our communities, not just Pasco County. I'm driving around Hillsborough County all week with Sam's partner at Tampa Bay for Change, dropping lit for judicial candidates and talking to folks. I couldn't believe that in Plant City there were 2 Democrats sitting out to advocate for this judicial candidate, like at the Plant City courthouse at the voting precinct there. Amazing. So today I went on live to talk, while I was sitting in the car sweating about the people that are out there doing the hot, heavy lifting. Make their time worth it. Go vote. Make sure that we preserve democracy, and I mean small d democracy. I am a Democrat. I'm a lily-livered liberal, as my dad would have said, but that's not what's at stake in this. What's at stake in this election is not a 5% COLA raise for Social Security recipients. What's at stake is the survival of Social Security, the survival of actual democracy. And again, for several cycles, this is the most important election of our lives. And every time we've said it, it's been true, and it's getting more true. And I really do fear that if we don't see some changes in this midterm election, we might never have another presidential election, or at least not one that we can say was fair, that was open, that was a ring. So democracy is on the line. We need your action. Think about it this. I wish that our races were really at the general, not the primary, because I think we'd see more focused turnout, people paying more attention to school board races that way. It's not the world we live in. So tomorrow, you're not voting for Jim Washington to be on the ballot in November. You're voting for him to be on the school board. Get your ballot turned in. Go and vote tomorrow, because this is your only shot to put him on. And how disappointed am I that I have to pick the lesser of two evils in several races on my ballot, not just in the school board race, but in the state legislative race. There are no reasonable people on my ballot. There are no, John Gallagher level Republicans on my ballot, for God's sake. I've lived here a long time. Like, there's nobody, there's no middle. There's nothing but people that are yelling and screaming about grooming and defund the FBI, or that's it. There's only ones. There's not even another side in this fight in some of these races. On the school board races,
the Adam Kinzingers in Florida.
Yeah. Where
or
are
even
those
say I'd settle for that.
I know it's creepy, but I'd settle for it.
Kinzinger said some really transphobic shit on Twitter not that long ago.
Did he?
He's not much better. He's really not much better. He's got this one thing he's dignified and principled on. I think we need more progressives running, period.
Yeah,
absolutely agree.
Better Republicans. It's not going to happen.
I think that JJ Wright should run for office. Really think that would be
JJ Wright.
Right.
Honestly, at the end of the day, when it comes to party politics, and I have felt this way for as long as I can remember, is that, even when we're looking, not to be controversial, but look at Hillary Clinton, for instance. When she's FLOTUS, and health insurance is super important to me. I have a very severe heart condition, a lot of other things, and I am really personally affected by that. I do identify as disabled. And, so to see like somebody like that go after healthcare so hard and insurance, but then when she becomes a senator, she is one of the top recipients for insurance lobbying money. Yeah, and and so for me, it's like, when I look at it from an issue of party politics, that's one piece of it. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything is going to change until Citizens United is overturned. And that's really the bottom line. And
what do we need to do to get there?
I mean, we need to appeal. We need to vote people out, and we also need to start paying attention to the money. But it's so hard to track dark money when you have, regulation on super PACs. It's completely irresponsible. But I also wanted to say to Sam, your point about like the stuff on Twitter, I have definitely had my head in the sand, like in a deep hole, only school board for a few months. So I really have only recently seen him on, the committee hearings and with Cheney. And so I appreciate you just ripping that out and be like, no, I'm not having it.
I'm glad to let Kinzinger and Cheney have their moment, have their profiles encourage moment, but
Cheney sure had
to eviscerate them next year, because they are not our friends. They are not for the things we are for. They're not. Yeah.
I just, especially from a local piece though, that is one thing where I'm like, I don't even want to talk about national politics, honestly. Because I just mean like when you're out there on the campaign trail, because so much of it doesn't even affect it. And they're really just looking at, all right, am I going to vote red or am I going to vote blue? And the problem is that it's quite possible that neither of those parties are serving you as an individual, especially at a local level. And so I just think in terms of educating people on the intricacies of our voting and an election process is where the money's at.
Right.
Yes.
Imagine my shock when Sam told me last year that the Florida Democratic Party did not support a $15 an hour minimum wage. Have you ever heard of any Democratic Party organization anywhere not supporting higher wages for workers? I couldn't believe that was true. I had to go look it up.
I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people that are scared about what's going on at the state level, and they're genuinely afraid.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also been a huge push for myself to be more, not that I've ever been not vocal, because I always have, but, you know, to be out there in the kind of the front line and to say, no, I'm disabled, I'm queer, I'm privileged, I'm this, I'm that, and yet I still hold these beliefs,
Right.
and here's why. And I think we need more of that. We need more people to speak up and say, hey, I shouldn't have to worry if I'm going to risk my job or my livelihood if I'm simply talking about human rights. Like, that's a problem.
So, yeah, Mindy Fleury Washington, who is in no way biased towards Jim Washington, who do our candidates serve, the constituents or their corporate overlords? Ask yourself. You can go and look on the Supervisor of Elections website. You can find the data on who's donating to these candidates. Ask yourself, what's the $1 billion developer's interest in a school board race?
Yeah.
Where is their interest in that race? What are they? We support him because we think he's going to do the most to raise new engineers for.
Well, I mean, no, I can tell you. I mean, I don't know if you know, Greg, but the commissioners, you probably already know this, but the commissioners have approved land development north on 589 on Suncoast, which goes up through Zephyr Hills.
We told them it would happen. We knew this would happen.
Yeah. And here's what I want to know. When you do that, why are we not building infrastructure first? Where are our impact fees? I want to know, because I've been asking for years. And I would argue that there is a discrepancy in the amount of impact fees that we should have versus what we've gotten. And I also can't understand why someone would need $83,000 to run for school board when social media is free.
Right. That's interesting.
Right.
I never want to miss an opportunity to remind people that the Moon Lake Road extension, which many of us in this community fought for years, was the Sereno track was a set aside given to the people of Pasco County because of the expressway, like that right of way over wetlands. They gave this other piece of property that contained wetlands to the people of Pasco County, and having now used that to develop that road, guess what's going to happen? The entire corridor, the last wild corridor in western Pasco County, is gone now. It's gone forever, and it's never coming back. And that, you know, the Sierra Club fought that. Other Pasco activists fought that. At the end of the day, our completely Republican county commission and their allies in the Trump administration managed to get that pushed through the Army Corps. That's the only reason it happened.
And why I'm here, sorry, before I go, I hope everybody is aware of what's going on with Signal 40. Or do you know what that's about as well?
No.
Tell us.
Okay, so someone in leadership somewhere decided to no longer issue Signal 40 when an ambulance is not available. Okay. And if you look up Pasco Firewire, they've been talking about it for a while. That's another group on Facebook. Basically what's happening is that our county is growing way too fast. We do not have the infrastructure to support it. We don't have the boots on the ground to support it. And we have people and commissioners that are more than happy to take the endorsement of our paramedics and our firefighters and our police force, but yet they're doing nothing to talk about the lack of resources. And so
rather than use that problem to increase funding for those agencies to make sure we don't, they just said we're not going to announce Signal 40 anymore.
Correct. And so that means that the public is now no longer even made aware when there is an ambulance that isn't available. So basically, like if you need an ambulance and there isn't one available, they would issue a Signal for 40. They're not doing that anymore. And there are a lot of us who've been trying to figure out who made that decision. Who made the decision? They say that it's not the commissioners. That's what I know.
No, it has to be the county administrator.
Oh.
It's got to be Dan Biles. It's got to be.
Well,
I mean, it's his responsibility whether he gave that order or not.
So, you know, I mean, there's a lot to be said for how fast Pasco is growing and the fact that we have a select few and we're forming a nice, small little oligarch. And there are a lot of us here that are smart enough to see what's going on, and we're not just going to kind of sit by and let it happen.
When's our next meeting? When can we let's get some people together and let's make some good trouble.
Well, I would love to see, you know, more people at the city council meeting on the 6th. And I would also love to see starting a petition to have at least, you know, the number of electorate within New Port Richey, probably around 12, 13,000. So in order to get it added to the agenda for them to have to vote on Debbie Mann's contract would take about 1,200 people, I would say. So that's something that the public can force the city to put on their council agenda to vote on.
Right on. Okay, so I'm really bad at the door knocking thing. Health-wise, it's not something I can do now, but what I am really good at is yelling very loudly at a lot of people. So when that petition starts, you're going to come tell us about it so we can tell people where to pick one up, how to sign it, how to get it turned in, stuff like that there, right?
Yeah. So
okay.
I do have to head out, but you know, everybody's seen my face, so I am the public thorn in the side for our people.
Been an hour and 10 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, JJ, if that is your real name.
Bye, guys.
I'll definitely see you on the 9th, and we'll get some other people out there too. September 9th, right?
September 6th.
September 6th.
6th.
It's the other upside down one. Okay, I got it.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, thanks. Bye, Jess. Well, that was fun.
That was a lot. Yeah.
Do you feel less lonely?
Well, you know what, man? What's so funny about doing this show with you is when we first came on, you know, we dropped the Pasco from So Local and then So Local Live. And I figured we would, you know, branch out a little bit. And Pasco County and the governments here in New Port Richey are just up to so much bullshit. We can't
stop talking
about it. We can't talk around the rest of the fucking state.
They don't live up here anymore. The reporters that would report on this don't really live here anymore.
Right.
That was true when I started the podcast 6 years ago. It's more true now. They've actually shrunk their news report. You know, they'll drive a helicopter in when somebody gets murdered or found in a refrigerator box. But short of that, there's nobody, you know, regularly covering Pasco County politics. So it's in season. This is the value of real journalism, right? And I'm not a journalist, but I will tell you that I pay close attention to these stories because I know that there's no local journalists covering them. And when that happens, bad shit happens. When there's nobody to follow them around and ask them the same question 80,000 times, annoying them in traffic, then they just continue to do what they were going to do.
Of course. How could they not? How could they not?
So while I'm talking about that, let me make sure that I tell you we have sponsors. We're very grateful for them. I did not bring up any of our sponsor information to give to you today. You can find all of it on the So Local Pasco or the So Local Live website, our So Local Live Facebook page. Sorry. Also, thank you to our Patreon sponsors. This is not journalism, but talking about it and having people on who are activists in the community who are going to help us get these things done. This is what we're doing. And this is what I'm spending the money that you send me on. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, I thank you. If you'd like to support this kind of talk, this kind of work, this kind of gaslight sheltering, get on, message us, send us a box of donuts. We like food and things. So give us a shout, give us a hand, and we'll keep doing this. We'll probably keep doing it regardless. But we really would love your support because it'll allow us to reach further. We can drive to Orlando to talk to somebody that's active in that community, or Manatee County to go visit with Cesar and find out what's going on down there. He did an amazing thing this week. He's been part of a community doing an amazing thing this week. The couple that was killed when their food truck overturned on the interstate, Cesar has been immersed in raising money for that family through a whole bunch of other food truck operators and the community in general. And that's why we're so proud of our association with Cesar and the law firm that helps him with those projects. Thank you, Cesar, for doing what you do. That's why we love you.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up here?
Man, well, I don't want to take too much time, but just a reminder, guys, the Florida primary is tomorrow. If you have a mail-in ballot, you're going to physically bring that thing in, or you got to show up wherever you vote. You can literally Google, where do I go to vote? And I promise Google's got you. It actually is that simple. Figure out where you need to go. Figure out where you need to drop off a ballot. If you don't have your ballot, if you're coming from work, walk in. Make sure you can vote. They'll say, hey, what about the mail-in ballot? Just say, hey, it didn't come. Or, hey, I just didn't send it out. Or, hey, I forgot. It doesn't matter. Send that.
They just have to account for it. Yeah.
And of course, on Instagram, on Facebook, Florida for Change. The change slate is up. We've got several counties, mostly the Tampa Bay area. Those are going to be the most exhaustively researched. We have Pasco County. We have Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Manatee County, Sarasota County. Even when the pickings are slim, there are people, especially in our school board races, as you've gathered from this fucking show, that need your help. They need you. They are running against people that self-identify as ARYANs. They're running against Moms for Liberty candidates who want to literally see our trans kids dead. So you not voting is going to empower that. And I'm not going to deal with my friends' kids in the community suffering because some people didn't vote. So I need all y'all to vote. We all got to vote. Even Sasquatch. Sasquatch would vote.
Well, Sasquatch is real. So
exactly.
That's central to our
real.
thesis. Right.
So if Sasquatch is going to do it, then we
Dave Coleman's been watching the show a bit because he went for the there is actually a video of a Sasquatch reported event in Turkey. I've seen the video. I don't think it's real, but that's because, believe it or not, I'm a skeptic when it comes to these things.
Sure.
Show me the body on the slab, and we'll have
go vote. Go vote. Right. Go vote. Go vote. Make sure you're voting for school board candidates. Shout out to Dr. Keisha Benson. Shout out to James Washington. Shout out to Damaris Allen. We have some incredible people around Tampa Bay all running. Go vote for them, please. Please, please, please.
Shout out to all of you who are listening to this conversation today and go, well, it's just not right that those guys are running, for state legislature unopposed by anybody that's a Democrat or a progressive. Yeah, it's a shame. So shout out to you for thinking, I could run for state legislature. You could, and we would be happy to help you do that for the right people to help.
You could have.
Yeah. Well, we can do it next time, right?
I run a PAC. I run a PAC. I have a source of money I would love to support. I will throw you money. I will get other people to throw you money. Next cycle, I want to see people that watch this show running for office. And I want to see Marlo Jones as the mayor of Newport Richey. And I want to see much less of his light. Wow. Yeah,
that's hectic. All right, so all the way RSVP tomorrow night. Me and my +1 will be at your house to watch election results. What time? 7 o'clock.
I mean, it's going to start rolling in at 7. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, all right. We love you guys.
Nancy Jacobs.
Yes, Nancy Jacobs. Who is Nancy? Nancy Jacobs is the person whose signs I've been delivering all week.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Good on me for being exhausted. All right. We love all of you. We're going to go do a bunch of running around tonight, tomorrow. This is the life of an organizer. We will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Do the thing.
I'm Greg, and Sasquatch is real.